They reported me for having a slightly overgrown bush in my front yard, saying, "We all have to follow the rules." So I took a closer look at their property and found out their fence was built too close to the street. The day the city ordered them to tear it down, they shouted, "You're just being spiteful." I never imagined that a simple bush in my front yard could spark such a neighborhood dispute. But here I am, sharing the story of how a minor landscaping issue escalated into a full-blown feud with my neighbors, the Petersons, in our quiet Springfield, Illinois, neighborhood. It all started on a bright Monday morning. I was enjoying my coffee on the porch when a city code enforcement officer approached my house. He handed me a notice stating that my front yard bush was overgrown and violated city regulations. I was taken aback. Sure, the bush had grown a bit wild, but it didn't seem like a significant issue. Perplexed, I asked the officer who had reported the bush. He hesitated but eventually mentioned that it was the Petersons. They had emphasized the importance of everyone adhering to the rules. I glanced over at their house, a pristine two-story with a meticulously maintained lawn, and felt a surge of irritation. Determined to address the issue, I spent the afternoon trimming the bush. But the incident left me unsettled. If the Petersons were so keen on upholding neighborhood aesthetics, perhaps their property should be scrutinized as well. Over the next few days, I observed their property more closely. That's when I noticed their fence. It extended all the way to the sidewalk, leaving barely any space between the fence and the street. A quick check with the city's zoning regulations revealed that fences needed to be set back at least 3 feet from the sidewalk for safety reasons. Armed with this information, I filed a complaint with the city. It wasn't about revenge, I told myself, but about fairness. If I had to adhere to the rules, so should they. A week later, a city official visited the Petersons. From my window, I saw the official gesturing towards the fence and taking measurements. The Petersons looked visibly upset. The following day, they confronted me as I was retrieving my mail. "Did you report our fence to the city?" Mr. Peterson demanded. "I did," I replied calmly. "After all, we all have to follow the rules." Mrs. Peterson's face turned red. "You're just being spiteful." I shrugged. "I just believe in fairness." The city gave them a month to relocate the fence. The once pristine Peterson residence now had a partially dismantled fence and construction materials strewn about. The irony wasn't lost on the other neighbors, some of whom gave me subtle nods of approval. The Petersons were told to tear down their fence and rebuild it properly. I thought that was the end of it. I figured they'd learn a lesson. Move on. Maybe stop nitpicking and mind their own damn business. But that's not what happened. That's when things got weird. About a week after they started tearing the fence down, I noticed muddy tire marks in my front yard. Not just once. 3 times in 1 week. Same pattern. Same kind of muddy tracks across my lawn, right near where that so-called offending bush had been. Coincidence? Maybe. But I had a gut feeling. So I bought a cheap little outdoor camera. Mounted it on a tree facing the street. Didn't even tell anyone. 2 nights later, 2:13 a.m., their teenage son, Brett, in his stupid pickup, swerved off the road just enough to spin his tires in my lawn before pulling back onto the street. The camera caught his license plate. Clear as day. So I did what any sane person would do. I printed the photo. I walked over to the Petersons' front door and taped it right to the middle of it with bright red duct tape. No note. No yelling. Just facts. "Next morning, Mr. Peterson was standing in my yard holding the picture like it was some kind of death threat. "You've got a lot of nerve, you know that," he snapped. I just looked at him. "So does your kid's truck." He didn't say anything. Just walked off, muttering something about lawyers. But I wasn't done yet. You see, when I started looking up city codes about fences, I got curious about other stuff too. I started reading the municipal codes like they were bedtime stories. I'm talking drainage, lawn chemicals, even garbage day violations. I wasn't trying to be petty, I was just making sure I knew what cards everyone else was playing with. Because when people play dirty, you better know the rules better than they do. That's when I found something else. Turns out the Petersons had installed a shed in their backyard about a year ago. Big one. With electric wiring too. But guess what? According to the city's permit records, no permit ever filed. Not one. No inspections. No permission. Nothing. So I called the city again. A week later, another city official showed up at their house. Clipboard, camera, measuring tape, the whole deal. I stayed out of sight, watched from my window. Mr. Peterson looked like he was about to explode. The official walked around the shed, took some notes, and handed over another notice. I knew it wasn't good news for them. Next morning, I found something new in my yard. Dog poop. Right in the middle of my driveway. I don't own a dog. That's when I knew this thing wasn't cooling off. It was just getting started. The dog poop was just the start. Every morning, a new pile. Like clockwork. Always on my driveway or right in front of my porch. And I knew it wasn't random. The Petersons had this little Yorkie, one of those yappy ones that never shuts up. I'd seen Mr. Peterson walking it early in the mornings, always looking around like he was scouting a mission. So I set up another camera. This time hidden behind the mailbox. And yeah, caught him. 6:07 a.m. Wearing a hoodie, looking both ways like he was about to rob a bank, and then letting his dog do its business on my concrete. Walked off. No bag, no cleanup. I didn't even confront him this time. I just uploaded the clip to our neighborhood Facebook group with the caption, "We all have to follow the rules, right?" That post blew up. Over 50 comments in a few hours. Half the neighbors laughing. The other half tagging him in the replies. He deleted his account by that afternoon. I thought maybe, just maybe, that would finally shut things down. But instead, it escalated. One night, around 11 p.m., I heard what sounded like a hammer hitting metal. I went outside and saw nothing. But the next morning, my mailbox was hanging by one screw, bent sideways like someone had taken a swing at it with a baseball bat. Petty and bold. I replaced the mailbox, reinforced it with a steel post, concrete base, the works. Then I installed motion-activated lights. 4 of them, bright as hell. One in the front yard, one pointing at the driveway, one on the side of the house, and one shining right on the shed in their backyard. If looks could kill, the glare I got from their kitchen window would have dropped me dead. But the real twist came a few days later. See, I hadn't seen their daughter, Macy, around for a while. Nice kid, maybe 19 or 20. Quiet. Used to wave when she drove past. Then one afternoon, she knocked on my door. She looked nervous, eyes darting around like she didn't want to be seen. "I'm really sorry," she said. "I just wanted to tell you, it wasn't my dad who started this." I blinked. "Come again," she sighed. "It was my mom. She's the one who called the city about your bush. She's always watching people, judging them. She said she was tired of living next to someone who doesn't care. But then when the fence thing happened, they all blamed my dad. He didn't even know she made the report. I just stood there, processing. Then she dropped the real bomb. My mom's been digging up stuff about you. She told me to go through your trash once. She thought maybe you were doing something illegal. She's obsessed. Please be careful." And then she left. Couldn't sleep that night. Someone going through my garbage? Stalking me? What kind of person does that? So I got a locking bin. I shredded everything. I set up even more cameras, pointing toward the alley, the side fence, the backyard. And just when I thought it couldn't get crazier, 3 days later, I got a visit from a guy in a button-down shirt and a clipboard. Claimed he was from Environmental Compliance. Said they received an anonymous tip that I was dumping toxic chemicals on my lawn. What? I laughed in his face. Invited him to inspect the entire yard. He walked around, took a few photos, and then said he'd file the visit as baseless. Guess who filed the report? I didn't have proof, but I didn't need it. It was so obvious. So I started documenting everything. Time-stamped videos, phone calls, screenshots, printed copies of everything that went online. I made a whole binder, labeled it Peterson Files. And then I found something else. Remember that shed? Turns out it wasn't just a permit issue. It was wired illegally. The Petersons had tapped into the main line without inspection. No fuse box, no grounding. A fire hazard waiting to happen. I submitted an anonymous tip, this time with photos I took from my own second-story window. I didn't even lie, just facts. That same week, the fire department showed up. They shut the power to the shed down, cited them for electrical violations, gave them a notice of non-compliance and a hefty fine. And guess what? The very next morning, I found a dead squirrel on my porch, placed there. No tire marks, no animal tracks, Just a stiff, dead squirrel sitting perfectly upright, staring at my front door like it was some kind of warning. Yeah. This isn't just about a bush anymore. The squirrel incident crossed a line. I didn't tell anyone at first. Not the neighbors. Not the city. I just stared at it for a long time. Because whoever did that didn't want to annoy me. They wanted to scare me. And that's when I stopped playing defense. I hired a private investigator. Yeah, I know it sounds extreme. But at this point, it was either that or wait for whatever came next. I told the guy everything. I gave him copies of the videos, photos, the binder with all my notes, and I asked him to find out anything that would explain why the Petersons had become obsessed with me. 2 weeks later, he called. You might want to sit down, he said. He'd pulled financials, tax records, and property reports. Turns out the Petersons were already in trouble before I ever touched a branch of that damn bush. Mr. Peterson had taken out a second mortgage on the house. Then he lost his job. They were months behind on property taxes. They were trying to sell the house off market quietly, hoping no one would notice the violations or the unpaid fees. And me? Reporting the fence? Reporting the illegal wiring? I'd blown it all open. The house couldn't sell until everything was fixed. And they didn't have the money to fix it. That's why they snapped. They were drowning. And instead of asking for help or admitting their mess, they turned me into the enemy. I became their excuse. Their scapegoat. So, I did the one thing I hadn't done yet. I printed the report. Every page of it. Neatly organized. Highlighted key points. And I mailed it. To every house on the street. No note. No message. Just facts. For a while, silence. The Petersons didn't come outside. No more dog poop. No more smashed mailboxes. No passive-aggressive lawn glances. Just quiet. Then, one morning, a big red for sale auction sign went up in their yard. Foreclosure. I didn't cheer. I didn't smile. Honestly, I felt a little sick. They were jerks, yeah. But now their whole life was on fire. Because they'd picked the wrong fight and made it personal. But karma didn't forget about me either. A few weeks later, a city inspector knocked on my door. Apparently, someone submitted an anonymous complaint that I had built an unapproved structure in my backyard. It was the old tool shed that came with the house, never touched it. But now it needed to be re-inspected. And you know what they found? Termites. The whole foundation was rotting from underneath. City gave me 30 days to repair it or tear it down. I laughed when I got the notice. All this started over a bush. And in the end, we both lost something. The Petersons lost their house. I lost part of mine. People think revenge is loud and angry, but it's not. It's slow. Cold. It eats away at you just like termites in the wood. You don't notice it until the damage is too deep. Yeah? The Petersons are gone. House is still sitting empty. And me? I keep my yard spotless. My bushes trimmed to code. My cameras running 24/7. And every morning, when I walk past that shed, I remind myself, just because you're right doesn't mean you're clean. Sometimes, everyone gets a little dirt on their hands.